Hey guys, for the next few minutes, I want to have a conversation with you about the difference between movements and organizations. Let's go back to the ALN vision statement for our academy. Here it is. The ALN Academy exists to build a global movement of bold leaders who are healthy, biblical, and effective. So it's right there in our vision statement. We're called to be a movement. And there's a difference between thinking like a movement and thinking like an organization. I want to share some of the big differences between movements and organizations. Now, I'm going to start by saying almost everywhere you look, human beings organize together, create organizations that end up doing things. And so we're not saying organizations are bad. What we're saying is we want to look at what we're doing through a different kind of lens. So let me explain what we think of when we think of movements and what we think of in terms of organizations. What are some of the big differences? Well, first of all, movements are explosive and organizations are incremental. We believe that this thing that we're doing to build bold leaders isn't meant to be a project of the next 20 generations. We want to start seeing a difference in this generation because it's this generation of leaders who need to lead like bold leaders. The time is short. One of the critical things that you see in the ministry of Jesus is its immediacy, or in other words, he was always trying to drive home this idea that the time is at hand. In fact, if you read the different gospels, each gospel has a unique theological approach. And one of the theological approaches that you see in the Gospel of Mark is this quick movement from scene to scene. It almost begins, it's almost like Mark is giving us a run-on sentence. First Jesus did this, and then he did this, and then he did this, and then he did this. It's all meant to drive home the immediacy of Jesus' ministries, the way in which Jesus was launching a movement, not launching another religious organization. So movements are explosive, organizations are incremental. The second difference, movements survive by expanding, organizations survive by conserving. So one grows and continues to survive by getting out. The other one guards its resources. It conserves its resources. So for a long time, I lived in a place called Michigan in the United States. It's in northern United States, and it's a place that's known for its very cold winters. In fact, sometimes you'd get so much snow that it would pile up to your chest, and you'd have to try to shovel it all out of your driveway just so you could get your car out and onto the road. Well, for a number of years, my family and I lived in a home that was heated entirely by a wood stove. Which was just a steel box that you would start a fire in, and it had a chimney that went out. And so all winter long, all the heat that we had in our home, which was pretty large, was given to us from that one small little wood stove. And every summer and fall, I'd have to go out with my sons, and we would take out chainsaws, and we would cut the wood into sections, and then we would split the wood, and then we would pile it in a woodshed. And we would have such an enormous amount of wood. It would be over my head, and it would stretch far over here and far over here. And I can remember I would sit there and I would just be hoping that we had enough wood for the winter. And then throughout the winter, you'd have to go out and move the snow off the wood, bring the wood into your house, put it in what was called a wood ring that would hold wood, an enormous amount of wood, and that would be enough to last you for maybe one day or even half a day. So we were all winter long, everything was about getting enough wood, feeding the fire to heat our home. Now that is a picture of conserving. Everything, all our energy, all the effort is conserving enough heat in our house so that our house doesn't get so cold. A picture of what it looks like to expand would be a forest fire. The difference between a movement and an organization is the difference between the fire that's in that little box and a fire that is set ablaze acres and acres and acres of forest. That fire doesn't need to be tended. It doesn't need to be kept. That fire naturally spreads. As long as there are trees to burn, it's going to keep going. And when we think about forming leaders for the next generation, what we want to do is we want to reach out and we want to see leaders everywhere that leaders are needed. We want to see them become bold leaders who are healthy, biblical, and effective. We want to see God do something explosive. We want to see Him do something expansive through the ALN Academy. Let me give you a third difference. Movements bring multiplication. Organizations bring addition. You think about how a local church exists. It very often exists because new people will come in. They'll add a new member here. They'll add a new member there. But a movement actually goes out, and it doesn't just get new members into one organization. It creates new leaders, and each of those new leaders create a new local church, or they revitalize their own local church so that that church begins to grow. I think about when I was a kid and I used to record music. I liked playing music, and I would go into a studio to record music. And when I was young, they would record on what was known as analog tape. And that was the tape that you would see going through a reel-to-reel recorder. And what you realized was that over time, that analog tape would grow less and less quality. And the way that you would get the music that you had recorded out is you would have to record music onto another tape, and that tape then would be less quality than the original. And then you would record from that tape and hand that onto another tape. And every time that you would make a copy, the quality of the message would go down. The quality of the music would go down. But as I grew up and matured, we moved from what was called analog tape to what's called digital tape. And that digital tape never lost its quality. Every time you make a copy, the digital recording would remain exactly the same because everything that you had in the original was copied into the next copy. So every single copy was of the pristine quality that we had originally captured in the studio. Our desire is to fuel a movement by passing on not just a few tools, but to pass on a way of thinking, to pass on, it's going to be like DNA. And the DNA of this movement will be copied into the heart of each person who is part of this movement so that when you pass it on, it's going to be exactly like what Jesus started. Jesus brought the disciples together. He trained them. He was with them. And while they were together, they actually got the heartbeat of Jesus. We want to believe that everybody who moves through the ALN Academy will capture the heartbeat of Jesus for what it means to be a bold leader. And that's what movements do. Last thing, movements create culture. Organizations create consumers. Movements create culture. Organization creates consumers. I want to just talk about the difference between those two things with a simple picture. I want you to imagine two different things. They're both built around one image, the image of eating a meal. Now, there's different ways to eat a meal. In picture one, imagine a woman by herself with no children, no husband. She goes to the supermarket. She buys some ugali flour. She comes home, she bakes it, and she eats a meal sitting by herself at her table. Second picture. A group of people gather to celebrate a wedding. The group of people are there together. They're experiencing life. They're experiencing the joy of the wedding. They're celebrating by eating this meal together. In both cases, people are eating a meal, but aren't the pictures totally different? One is lonely and it's by itself. The other is a wedding and it has a reason for celebration. We believe that the ALN Academy is going to create within the heart of people a culture that's connected. We're connected by common values. We're connected by a common vision. We're connected by a common sense of what it means to lead the Church of Jesus Christ. It's the greatest honor that we could possibly imagine. To share the gospel with lost people is the greatest honor we could ever imagine. And that's the culture of the ALN Academy. It's the culture of the movement that you're a part of right now. So let me close simply by one more time restating our vision. The ALN Academy exists to build a global movement of bold leaders who are healthy, biblical, and effective. Now, I want to turn things over to you. You're going to have a chance to discuss what you just watched. Your facilitator will help you know what you need to do next.